Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Charles, and welcome you guys to another episode of the Dreamerspro Show, where we cover everything from sports, hot topics, classic debates, entertainment, and when we give you guys a fresh perspective on things and how we see them. And boy, oh boy, we got an episode for you guys here today. I'm going to go through this very quickly. You don't want to miss a second, so stick around for everything that I got to say in this particular show here. But before we get into it, make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. Now, we have a major breaking news. The Brooklyn Nets have decided to part ways with Steve Nash as their head coach, and they have fired him. This is via Adrian Wojnarowski, and we got that information from ESPN.com. I want to quickly read a little bit of what the article had to say, and then I'm going to get into the meat and potatoes of this particular video. Basically, the article says Steve Nash is out as head coach of the Brooklyn Nets. The team announced Tuesday the decision to part ways was mutual between the Nets and Nash. Sources told ESPN Adrian Wojnarowski, "We want to thank Steve for everything he brought to our franchise over the past 2 seasons." General Manager Sean Marks said in a statement Tuesday, "Since becoming head coach, Steve Nash was faced with a number of unprecedented challenges, and we are sincerely grateful for his leadership, patience, humility through this tenure. Personally, this is an immensely difficult decision. However, after much deliberation and evaluation of how the season has begun, we agreed that this change is necessary at this time." In a separate statement, Nash thanked Marks and team owner for an amazing experience with many challenges that I'm grateful for. Assistant coach Jacques Vaughn, pay attention to this part. Assistant coach Jacques Vaughn, the fellow with the big beard on the bench that you normally see, is acting head coach tonight, but expect, listen to this part, the Nets to inquire with suspended Boston Celtics head coach Ime Udoka and former head coach head coach Quinn Snyder, amongst other sources told ESPN Adrian Wojnarowski. Boston will let Udoka leave for another job. That is a bombshell of a piece of information. Why? Because about 2 or 3 weeks ago, Stephen A. Smith went on ESPN First Take. Some of you remember, you may not remember. We don't have time to put that audio in this particular show, but you guys can go hunt it down. He went on there and he essentially said that he believes that one of the reasons the Boston Celtics decided to suspend Ime Udoka indefinitely was because in the case in which they fired him, the Brooklyn Nets would fire Steve Nash and ultimately go after Ime Udoka. At the time, Chris Mad Dog Russo was on the show that day, if I'm not mistaken, and he said that he didn't agree with Stephen A. Smith, and Stephen A. Smith said this is not something that he heard, it's just an assumption that he's making, it's just an epiphany that he had. And a lot of people at the time thought that was a stretch, and we actually produced the show around that idea. And now, here we have ourselves a situation in which the Brooklyn Nets have fired Steve Nash. We all know that Steve Nash just wasn't the guy for the job for whatever reason. He couldn't corral this team. You didn't see him really making an impact. Their defense was terrible this season. They were on a free-for-all. And last night they beat the Indiana Pacers team. But they're not really a really good team, and they were the team that they just lost to 1 or 2 nights prior. So the team was on a free-for-all, right? Of course, you had the Kyrie situation. Kevin Durant seemed to be mute. No one really knew where the leadership was coming from, and something had to be done. In this case, they decided they needed to fire Steve Nash, something that doesn't really shock any of us. Here's the issue, however. The Brooklyn Nets leadership seemed to be rudderless, because that was the very decision that the Brooklyn Nets just made was the very recommendation, or rather the ultimatum, that Kevin Durant gave to the team this offseason when he said, listen, if you guys want me to come back, it's either you fire the general manager and Sean Marks or you get rid of Steve Nash. The Brooklyn Nets, Joe Tsai, said, no, we're going to be standing pat with our staff. We're going to give them 100% of our backing. And KD, you guys are going to have to play what you got. 6-7 games into the season, they end up doing the very thing that Kevin Durant demanded that they do. What does that say about the Brooklyn Nets? It says that this team has no idea what the hell that they're doing. That's number one. Number two, Stephen A. Smith is looking like a seer right now. He is looking like Nostradamus right now. You got to give him his credit for that, because this was an angle I didn't think about. And now, based on what this ESPN report just confirmed at the very end, let me read it once more. Assistant coach Jacques Vaughn is the acting head coach tonight, but expect the Nets to inquire with suspended Boston Celtics head coach Ime Udoka. And then it says Boston will let Udoka leave for another job, sources said. What else did I say when I was covering this story? I also said that I don't believe, or I didn't believe rather, that Ime Udoka was going to return to that position. I also said that. I said I don't see it. Why would they? If that was the case, give it a definitive suspension time. Say you're suspended for 3 months. Say you're suspended for X amount of time, but they did 1 year. That means you don't want the guy for the next year. They didn't want any part of him. So Stephen A. Smith was 100% about the money, and I think none of us should be surprised at all if they're able to acquire Ime Udoka as a head coach. Let me tell you why that would be a fantastic pickup for the Brooklyn Nets if they're able to pull it off. Let me tell you why. Number one problem area for this team is their defense. What did Ime Udoka do with the Boston Celtics before he took over? Before he took over that team, I think they had a 21-18 record. When he finished with them, I think they had a 51-31 record, if I'm not mistaken. By the time he was done with that team, they became the number 1 rated defense in the NBA. What do the Brooklyn Nets desperately need? They desperately need to bolster their defense. And a guy like Ime Udoka may be the guy for the job. He may be the guy for the job. So if the Brooklyn Nets are going to go after him, and my assumption they are, and I think they're going to get him, he may be able to salvage this situation. And maybe the one thing that the Brooklyn Nets are doing is not waiting. Maybe they're looking at the situation and say, listen, we're 6-7 games into this thing. This thing is looking bad. Let's not wait till we're, after Christmas, when we have all of this evidence of something that we could have known 2 months prior. Let's act now. Let's do it now. And I think before they made this decision, I'm sure the players gave the go-ahead. I'm sure they gave the go-ahead, and it may not have anything to do with tenure, meaning the Brooklyn Nets needed to go hire somebody that has a bunch of championship experience. No, it may just be they need a different voice and they need a different guy, and Steve Nash obviously wasn't resonating with those guys in the locker room, and that's why he's gone. So to me, Stephen A. Smith was 100% on the money. He was the first person and the only person that threw this idea out there. He was the only person that said that, and he did say, this is not something that I heard. This is just something that I think. He's 100% on the money, and I think the guy that may most likely get this coaching job is going to be Ime Udoka. And I think this NBA season is about to take another plot twist, and I think he may be able to do a good job with this Brooklyn Nets team, because scoring is not their problem. Defense is their problem, and he's the right guy that they absolutely need. So what I want to know from you guys is, what do you think about this information that I just gave to you? Whatever you guys think, please leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section, and we catch you guys on the next one. Peace.